with sociology. And therefore, this conference, therefore, is very well organized with sub-themes that touch on across disciplines: education, health, research, entrepreneurship, and so on. And with a great focus on the sustainable utilization of biodiversity. The place of biological sciences in development is fitting in now. If I can give a flow chart, this is my own theory, which can be tested using your research methodologies. In the 18th or 17th century, we had the Industrial Revolution, which saw that if you put bio and information, you get bioinformatics. And these are the ones that are going to revolutionize the world moving forward. Of particular interest is genetics. Since 1952, when a team of geneticists led by George Bidu won the Nobel Prize in biochemistry and medicine, about 60% of those prizes up to today have been won by scientists out of their work in deciphering the understanding of genetics. And therefore, this is what is going to lead in the coming epoch of development. Already, we are experiencing this. In fact, a lot of us who have received the vaccine for COVID-19, that vaccine was made possible, many of them, not all, through genetic engineering, by use of RNAs and DNAs, the genetic material. And that is why it was possible to have a vaccine or vaccines that were rolled out to the people so quickly. Under ordinary circumstances, vaccine or through ordinary conventional methods, vaccines take about 10 years to develop and to deploy. But these ones, we were able to get them fast because of the intervention of genetics. The vaccine that is also used for against Ebola is also developed through modern biotechnology, through genetic engineering, and so on and so forth. The list can go on. The insulin that we use today in managing diabetes is generated through genetic engineering. Previously, insulin was extracted from tissues of animals, the closest relative of human being the pig, and then it is purified and it can be used for managing diabetes. But now, where scientists were able to pick the gene that makes insulin, pick it from wherever source, the pig, and paste it on bacteria so that they can grow bacteria on a media, and therefore they only need to, quote unquote, milk the insulin from that culture. That purification of that insulin is more easy, simpler, and it is cheaper. So that part of my preamble emphasizes the key role that research and innovation plays in development of and also emphasizes the significance of your conference in sharing ideas, disseminating the information that you have, and in the generation of new knowledge. I will touch a little on the role of government now in RST and one, the role of government coming from an institution. There are other institutions that could speak to this even better than myself, but I like to highlight that our role as government, one, to develop policies. The policies around research, science, technology, and innovation. And one of the lead institutions that I'll be mentioning a little later is the National Commission for Science, Technology, and Innovation, referred to in short as NACOSTI. I'm sure many of you have interacted with NACOSTI when seeking a permit to carry out certain research. You must have been to NACOSTI. So the leadership of the ministry, therefore, is to lead in policy development and policy implementation for science, technology, and innovation, for which research is a component. The other role is to develop legal and regulatory framework. For example, in the management of IP, intellectual property, some of the papers that are being presented here today could be of intellectual value that we may not know. But so the government also spearheads the development, not only of the national, but also of the institutional regulatory frameworks, including intellectual property management, and also development of various acts. In this particular space of research, science, technology, and innovation, the key act is the Science, Technology, and Innovation Act, which provides for the governance of science, technology, and innovation. And this act establishes 3 key institutions: NACOSTI, which I've just mentioned, the Kenya National Innovation Agency, an agency that oversees the management of national innovation system, and then the National Research Fund, which is a fund that was established by government to finance research, recognizing that a lot of research in the country may be financed by other outside sources. And we needed to have control of what we research on, and therefore the National Research Fund was established by this act. There are several other universities, several other acts of parliament, including the Universities Act, which I think governs your business as an institution, and also that gives direction in the development of research within the universities. Then I can't fail to mention the act that establishes the institution that I lead, the Biosafety Act, which again comes in to regulate the space of research in genetically modified organisms. Now, the next thing that government does is the establishment of institutional and academic framework that governs research. And I've given the key examples of the regulatory agencies, but here also comes the research institutes, the Kenya Agriculture and Livestock Research Organization, the Kenya Industrial and Research Institute, Kemu, and so on. And then, of course, the public universities. So that is the key roles of government. And finally, funding. I know this is of great interest, and this is where now the National Research Fund comes in to fund research. Most of these institutions that I have indicated are public institutions, and what goes on there, both in terms of infrastructure and human resource, is funded directly by the government. And that is where we come in as GOK. I want to pose a research question because you're researchers, you could find out whether this is the case. And my question is there too much regulation in this space? And I think those who are in the field of health systems management, our facilitator here, Professor Wanja, those who are in other management systems, you can help us to see whether there is a possibility of too much regulation. And this can be published and it can be critiqued in your own ways of the way you critique. Now, one of the reasons for regulation, however, is security. And I note that one of your sub-themes is on security. And we are party to the Biological Weapons Convention. Again, NACOSTI is the focal point in this. And the purpose of this is to outlaw the stockpiling of biological agents for purposes of their use as biological weapons. You know, technology is both beneficial, and if it lands in the wrong hands, it can be of detrimental to security and to safety of people. Take, for example, somebody who goes and produces anthrax causing bacteria, and then with an intention of releasing it to populations. Those are called weapons of mass destruction, and the world community negotiated the Biological Weapons Convention that outlaws the stockpiling and development of these areas. So that is one of the reasons that we regulate, to be sure that technology is in the right hands, because if it gets into the wrong hands, then we will be having a problem, and therefore it becomes a security issue. The other reason is an example that is given where some people came into the country posing as researchers, and they went to Lake Bogoria. Lake Bogoria is where we have the hot springs, very hot water coming from underground. I understand that if you place some eggs there, after a short while, the eggs will be cooked. So it is very, very high temperatures. Then they discovered that there is a green algae that is growing at the heart of that hot spring. Then the question is, what is this living organism that is able to survive these very high temperatures? Some research, some discovery. Then out of that, they discovered an enzyme in that green algae, which became important in industrial use. They use it in bleaching material of jean trousers. You know, the trousers that we buy from out there. A lot of our young people don't want them uniformly colored. If it is a blue jean, they don't want it uniformly colored. They want it bleached on some parts. So because that reaction takes place at very high temperatures, they couldn't find an enzyme that can survive that high temperature. They got it from Lake Bogoria. And now that has been patented. And even as a Kenyan, even as a resident of Baringo, if you want to use that enzyme, you pay royalties to some people. So the question is, whose property is this? Who should benefit from this kind of biodiversity? And therefore to regulate, so that we know what is happening within the research space in Kenya. If you're coming into the country or you are a researcher, you will need permit from NACOSTI. If you are touching on aspects of the environment, you need also to be cleared by NEMA. If you are targeting areas that are protected under KWS, you also need a permit by KWS. Now that comes back to my question, is that and is it? And I have pointed out a number of points that one can consider, but you being researchers, that would be a good point to conclude my talk this morning, posing a research question as researchers determine what is regulation, so that we ensure that we do not stifle science, and at the same time, we also don't open ourselves to potential. Thank you very much, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Privilege and opportunity to speak to you this morning. Asante.
Thank you very much, speaker. We've had the key highlights, biodiversity as a key issue, and how research really comes to address challenges in society. And that's what we are doing. We are trying to come up with solutions to challenges in spacing. Are we regulating?
Mbali. Nini mtarudi kwenda shule?
If you are muted, please. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Of academia, we also interact with you quite a lot. We are in one board of management in our area. Thank you for your contribution to our research conference today, and your very rich enlightenment on the biodiversity. Now, I have always feared the issue of GMOs. Now, what is the big issue And why are people afraid when the GMO products are mentioned? It didn't have any health consequences for the people in the farm. So I would like us to go to interrogate that a bit deeper by you telling us, because you say when the people hear about it, they even want to stone you, stone the scientists, until you explain to them. But what was the background of this fear? Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have a question. You can post your question online and then we'll pick it up.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kibara, for that question. It keeps coming up, and the question is, what is the big issue? And is there any health issue with the genetically modified organisms? And what forms the background of the fear? I will start by maybe the background. Usually, new technologies, any new technology, creates fear because people don't understand it, people don't know much about it. So the fear of the unknown is real in all circumstances. I normally give an example of the mobile telephone. When we started using mobile telephone, it was said that it will cause ear cancer. You remember that? That it will also cause even brain cancer. And there is a small gadget we used to buy and stick it somewhere on the phone so that they can cancel the waves that would cause cancer. But the reality isn't the truth. It is because we didn't know, and there are people out there who are special meals for creating fear. So we were told, don't touch the mobile phone, it will cause cancer. You can see now everyone of us is using that, including the young children. The other one is when vehicles converted to driving using the front wheels. Before, some while back, vehicles would push using the rear wheels. But now we use the front wheels to pull. There was a lot of resistance. People say the front wheels are the ones that are also doing the steering. So are we safe to have them on the front? And again, people were skeptical. But today, a lot of vehicles are driving on the front wheel. So the background of the fear is the fear of the unknown, or the fear of things that you do not know. And therefore, probably justified because something that you don't know, there is reason to fear. However, after 26 years of experience in the commercial utilization of products of genetic engineering, there has been no scientifically credible study that links genetically modified products with any health issue for humans or for animals, or even for the environment. However, like I said earlier, any technology can be used by people of negative intent, and that is where we come in to regulate. And it is also not correct, of course, scientifically, you all know this, to say in a blanket that all these things are safe, or all these things are not safe. We treat each genetic engineering endeavor on a case-by-case basis. And we test, we check to ensure that it is safe. That which we have approved to be safe, like in Kenya, we have approved the cultivation of cotton that is constitutively protected against the cotton bollworm. And we have placed our seal of approval that this is safe. We do not work alone as an institution. We work with relevant regulatory agencies, the National Environment Management Authority, the Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service, the Directorate of Veterinary Services, the Directorate of Public Health, and a few others. So the history of use. In fact, one time the European Union commissioned over 300 studies and none found any linkage between use of GM products with any form of disease. in 2012, a group of scientists from France, led by one Professor Serrarini, published a study that purported to link the consumption of GM maize with cancer, feeding some rats. But that study was very skewed. All of us researchers, you know how studies must be designed. And it was thrown out. It was even pulled down by the the journal that published it initially. And it was out of that study that the Kenya government, among other governments, instituted a ban on the importation and the use of genetically modified organisms, which is in force even today. Except the cotton that we have approved, there cannot come any other genetically modified food into the country because of that ban. The study has, over the time, been discredited. It has been pulled down from the publication. You know what it means when you publish and then the journal pulls it down. It is very, very negative on the aspect on the credibility of the researchers. One of the areas that was detected was that the researchers used mice or rat that is genetically bred to develop tumors, to develop cancer, as a study organism to show scientists how tumors develop. So these particular mice, even if you fed it on water, on the food that you're eating, on GM food or non-GM food, they will eventually develop cancer. And therefore, you see that is really flawed because you must have a control that is truly a control. Now, that is one of them. There are many others. Now, finally, therefore, that is the big issue. There is also the issue of commercial. Remember, the Cartagena Protocol exempted GMOs that are of pharmaceuticals, those that we use as medicine or as generators of medicine were exempted. Even our act, the Biosafety Act of Kenya, consistent with the Cartagena Protocol, exempts those. Why? Why is it becoming an issue when we come to food, when we come to agriculture? It is not an issue when you get a jab. It is not an issue when you use insulin that has come from this same technology, but it is an issue when it comes to food. So that brings in another group that is basically people who are anti-globalization and commercialization, who see danger in what they do by adopting this technology. For example, when we use cotton, the cotton is protected against the bollworm. Instead of spraying about 12 times, the farmer will only need to spray about 2 times, and the other insects, not the bollworm, which means now the person who sells chemicals will start feeling where is my market going, and therefore they can finance very, very loud kind of protests against this technology. But I can tell you, the technology is even more precise than what we used to do before called mutation. So the fear is real because it is not known, but I can tell you it is even more precise, it is more accurate, but again, there is that fear that it can be used for negative impact. And I think that is real, but that is why governments therefore established institutions like our own to assure on the safety. Thank you.
Maybe as we get another question, I have 2 questions. I have 2 questions from the chat. One of them is, my question is to the guest speaker. I feel the government has not done enough to support and promote research activities in the country. Can you share some insights on the specific areas the government is focused on and available funding opportunities at the national and county level? The second question, that was a question from Lucy. Lucy, there was another question by Dr. Lagat. As an authority and what as an authority, what programs do you have in place for sensitization of citizens to ensure safety of humans and animal health from GMO? And then another question from Geoffrey. He says, thanks for the address. Biological sciences revolution is inevitable. What other studies after the Seralini study are there to generate evidence for policymakers in adoption of biotechnology innovations, particularly on GMO? Maybe one more question and then.
Dr. Mshiri has raised his hand online. Give the other one first.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Roy, for the good presentation. Since this is dealing with biosafety, we are concerned as Kenyans that the government may not be doing enough to protect its citizens from some of the harmful things in the market as our business. For example, research has been done that we have cancer-causing situations. For example, some chemicals are spread on our veggies, and those veggies find their way into our market. What is the government doing to protect us from those harmful things? We also know that there are some animal products which are also in the market, and we consume them. Is the government doing enough to protect us from usage of those contaminated sources? And then also, there is also something to do with the source of this bacteria. You know, we have in our laboratories, we do carry out laboratory preparations. So some of them, like the one that we intimated, anthrax-causing bacteria. We're also doing some danger. So those bacteria, what do we do? What is the government doing to ensure that they are not exposed or they don't spread? The institutions, which are the institutions well infrastructured, and probably those are our health and safety concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. One last question.
Thank you, our keynote address speaker, Dr. Roy. My quick question is, I think it's related partially to what Dr. has raised, the use of what we call dual use technology question, where you can have a product that is likely to go either way, and the levels of control. For example, we have food industry that is producing food, and that same food industry could still be used for targeting, populations. I don't know how far that is happening in terms of control. The second part is a safety concern that was generally either raised or was misrepresented during the COVID vaccination process, where we were using the RNA-based vaccines. There was a question of what is the possibility of insertion or integration, and eventually making the individual genetic makeup limiting itself and people dying. And we had all these conversations going on. So I think since you are a biologist who has dealt with some of this, you might tell us, how do these genes eventually work? We know the integration of genes, they happen, HIV and others, but when you use an RNA-based technology, what is the likelihood of that insertion to happen and eventually limiting the individual genetic makeup from, for long life? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. We have the last one.
It's a quick one. Thank you, Dr. Roy. What I would want to ask is, what is it that Kenya can take pride in? That they have discovered something that can be globally acknowledged. That's one. Two, what happened to Cameroon? I thought Kenya was coming out with something. And the last one is that when I meet a number of people, this corona ni kitu imetengenezwa. And sometimes I'm not able to really give a good answer. Thank you.
Thank you. I think those questions we will take in interest of time. Daktari.
Thank you very much, colleagues, and thank you for these questions, quite a number. I must confess, I may not have answers to most of them. Some of them we shall leave them for, when you conclude your research work, you must leave areas for further. So I will leave some for further studies. The question by Lucy, government has not done enough to support research. What are the opportunities and funding opportunities for funding? I want to, enough is relative, but I also hear where this particular question is coming from. One of the areas that has always come up as deficient, and of course resources are finite, is funding. And if you go around within our research establishment, within the higher learning institutions, and also within the research institutions, you will find a lot of projects being funded by external sources. And like they say, the one who pays the piper also calls the tune. And we realized that early enough. That's why we dreamt of National Research Fund with a provision that this fund will grow. In fact, it is in law, up to 2% of the GDP growing. You don't provide at once, which is about 67 billion shillings, quite substantial amount of money if you think about it in that way. Now, we started off by allocating monies to the NRF. NRF has distributed some of these monies to certain research institutions, but I agree with this particular observation that is not enough, because the funding so far in Kenya is about 0.67%, not very sure, the figure keeps changing, but the AU declaration is that we fund up to 1%. So you can see, even within the AU commitment, we are not yet there. And therefore, I agree with Lucy that indeed it is not enough, but the government is working towards enhancing the kitting. We can have funding out of which we can create priorities, which again is the responsibility of NACOSTI, so that a researcher may come and say, I want you to carry out research on wheat. But wait a minute, wheat may not be very useful to us. We consider sorghum more important to us as a drought-resistant crop, as a crop that has ABCD value. We are able to determine our own priorities. And that is where we're going. We aren't there yet, I agree, but that is the direction. Dr. Lagat on sensitization program for GMOs. This is the place where I want to agree with you 100%. And on behalf of my institution and even the broader government program, I want to admit that this is the area we haven't done well. It is very, very, very unlikely that you find somebody saying, yes, indeed, we haven't done well, but it is clear from the expression that Dr. Kibara said that you see people's attitude change. Already that tells you that there is innate fear. We took our members of parliament a number of times to South Africa so that they can see GMO maize growing in the fields and therefore interact with it and learn from that. After crossed a long way through fields of GMO maize, we arrived at the farmer who was hosting us. Then as we were talking, the members of parliament were asking us, where is that GMO? And, in Kiswahili, iko wapi? And so I told them, we told them the whole of the fields that you have seen, it is actually GMO maize. Then they say, but we didn't see it. You can see there is something they expect to see. Maybe what we will describe in what we read in school as the stories of an ogre, the huge human being with one eye in the middle here and several mouths, and I think that is what they expected, which is really not the case. The maize is the same maize, only that it has been changed. So I agree with the participants, Dr. Lagat, that we haven't done well. in that particular aspect. And this is one of the things that we want to enhance. When we participate in shows, we were in Meru show the other day. Basically, we have a table where we show brochures. The good thing now in Kenya, we have a crop that has been approved, the BT cotton, which we can put side by side. This is the BT, this is the non-BT. Look for yourself, make your own judgment. And I think that is the best kind of sensitization that we can carry out. I don't know that the other question, I didn't get the name of the person who asked it. Biological revolution is real, he's agreeing with me. What happened after saline studies and what other studies have come forward? A paper has been published by a consortium of Kenyan researchers from a consortium called the Kenya Consortium of Biotechnology, Kubiko. I can't read it completely, from the University of Nairobi, that has analyzed that paper and therefore pointed out in very, very specific ways how that research failed. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations also commissioned a study that has shown no effect of the feeding to human health. The Vatican, which is the seat of authority for the Catholic Church, also commissioned a study. And again, all these studies have shown that indeed there is no relationship between feeding these organisms or feeding these animals on GMO maize. So a lot has been happening, and what we are looking forward to, a lot of other governments that instituted a ban out of this study have lifted up and lifted the ban. We are in discussions with the Kenya, also within ourselves, to find a way of addressing that as well. But the Kenyan cabinet has allowed the applications of GM technology on a case-by-case basis, which again, I think that is the best way to go, so that we are able to say this is safe. Government not doing enough to protect from chemicals on foods. We have seen very sensational reports on media, which are actually accurate and which are based on scientific analysis of vegetables from certain markets. And I think that is what our colleague is pointing at. I will not be able to say much about this. It is within the docket of the Directorate of Public Health, within the Ministry of Health. But one of the first steps is to identify the issue. And I think the research that has already been published showed very alarming levels of certain heavy metals and certain other dangerous components, even within agricultural produce, not even those that are produced within the cities that we expect are picking these from sewage systems and so on. Even the kind of chemicals we spray on our crops in the farm, some of them are really toxic, and the hang-on is also a cause of alarm. I will not be able to say this, but I also recognize that the Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service has a role to play in that, in ensuring residues are within levels that are permissible within the World Health Organization guidelines. The source of bacteria, for example, the anthrax that we give, where does it come from? It is within our labs as research organism. It is within other labs as diagnostic labs. You can imagine when you visit even a simple medical lab, and your sample is taken, and the sample is found to have even brucellosis, the bacteria that causes brucellosis. Where does that go to? Supposing somebody picked that and then multiplied it and stockpiled it, developed maybe a method of disseminating, that can be very dangerous. This is governed under the Biological Weapons Convention, and what countries have come up with is a control list. There is a list of organisms that are controlled. And those we need as a country to know who is having what and where is it and how is it kept. An accountability method. We may not have that for the moment, but we are developing that so that we are aware that at the research laboratory at Kenya Methodist University, we have organism X, Y, Z, which are within the control lists. The accountable person is the lab technician, so and so. He is trained to handle them, to take care of them, and to ensure that they do not go to the wrong hands. That ties up with the second question by our colleague on dual use technology. We recognize that these organisms are necessary for research. And that is why the other day, when some organisms started showing similar characteristics as smallpox, there was a cry all over the world. And then questions started coming. Can we find an isolate of smallpox that can help us study this one that has come up? And I think it was found, I'm not very sure. But the point is, these organisms are important for our research. How do we keep them? The lab levels and training researchers for self-regulation. We have come to recognize as the global community and even as government that there is no better regulation than self-regulation, so that you can have your own regime to regulate yourself and not wait for people to come from outside. Number 7, COVID-19 vaccine, again from our colleague, I'm trying to remember the name, is a fellow man fellowship in some congregation that we have been attending together. The possibility of integration, when the target point is RNA, you know, RNA is at the point where it has already copied information from DNA. It is now transcribing that information from into a protein sequence. And therefore, at this point, the possibilities of integration are really not possible into your own genome. Because it is already at the last stages of gene expression. Maybe that can be interrogated a little further, but that is the way I understand it for the moment. It also created a lot of controversy, but again, this needs to be interrogated a little further. But the chances of the viral DNA integrating into our genetic makeup are nil, because the developing is at the RNA stage, which is towards the stage of gene expression. What can Kenya take pride in as a discovery? I think we may need to do an audit. This is not something I can answer from the top of my mind at the moment, because like you mentioned, Cameron made all of us very happy and we were excited. In fact, with the word care, meaning Kenya, and bringing some solution. But one that I've known has come out of Kemu is what is now commonly called as pre-exposure prophylaxis. I'm trying to pronounce that correctly. It is called in short PrEP. PrEP is a medication that people can take to protect them from if they expect to be exposed from HIV, and it has worked very well. That is the only one that I can think of right from now, but I think the story is bigger than that, and possibly an audit will be useful. Is COVID manufactured? I will not make comment. I will only say a few things about the nature of the COVID genome, the gene of COVID-19. Traditionally, and epidemiological studies that have been conducted over time, a disease that moves from animals to humans is called zoonotic disease. It is coming from animals to humans. Normally, when that happens, when the infection comes from animal X and goes to human A, it has no ability to get from human A to human B. You get it? So it loses the ability to transmit in the human population. However, the COVID-19 was completely different. When it moved from, or rather the theory that says it moved from animals to humans, it became even more prolific in spreading from one human to another, which now tells you that there is something that is outside the ordinary. I don't want to say much about that. Then, when you look at its DNA, is a chimera. It has parts that resemble other viruses. It has parts that resemble the HIV virus. It has parts that resemble the COVID, the usual COVID. You know, the common cold, the usual common cold, they are all COVID viruses. Then it has some other parts that resemble, which as indicators that possibly there are things that were put together. But I don't want to go further than that, just to say that is a possibility. But again, this has been contested, and I think studies are still going on. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Dr. Roy. The insights. We have more questions online, but they're all around GMO and what it means. I think in the interest of time, we'll not be able to take all the questions. From here, maybe if there is no more, that was the official session with the keynote speaker. We'll take a short break of 10 minutes. I know we are running short of time. And then we should be back at exactly 10:35, and we will have the next session starting then. So grab a cup of tea, and thank you very much for the 78 participants who are online. We really appreciate that you have stayed with us so far. And for the participants who are with me in the room, we will grab a cup of tea, and we shall be back with our first presenter getting ready at exactly 10:35. Thank you. Let's take a break.
ladies and gentlemen, we are back to the program, and thank you very much for turning up. We are glad that you were able to join and also participate in the first phase. We will continue with our program, and our program starts with presentations. Sorry. I'm on my computer. Can people hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Are you hearing me?
Very clear, very clear.
Yes, yes.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me there?
Yes.
You are very clear, Director.
Can anybody hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes?
We do,
Yes,
we do.
we are hearing you.
Thank you very much. So thank you. We know we are running short of time, so we'll continue with our program, and we are going to start off with a presentation. I'm going to confirm that we have Thomas Esieni. Is Thomas Esieni available?
Yes, yes, I'm available, Dr.
Very good. Thank you. We'll follow that with Dr. Charles Lagat. Is Dr. Charles Lagat available? Charles?
Yes, I am here.
Thank you very much. And then we will follow with Madina Duba Guyo. Is Madina Duba Guyo within? Madina Duba Guyo? All right, thank you. So I hope you will be able to join us. Each presenter will have 10 minutes, and you will be strictly allowed your 10 minutes. So we use your 10 minutes to make sure you communicate, you project your work, and we are able to know what is happening. My name is Dr. John Mushiri. I am going to be the chair of this session, and we're working together with my colleague, Dr. Job Ompesa, to moderate this session. So, Thomas, if your presentation is ready, we are going to have you start, and we are happy that you are going to be the first presenter of our conference, immediately following the keynote address. So everybody else who is not going to be speaking, we encourage you to stay muted so that we do not disrupt or interfere with the presentations that are going to be going on. And we can take note of the questions that you would want to ask. After the three presenters have made their presentations, we'll give you a chance for, we'll have a chance for question and answer, and we will be able to give you an opportunity to actually. The projections will be done from this end. So Thomas, you don't have to project, to be projected from this end, so that because we are sitting somewhere together and we want to have it projected even on the walls. Yes, you're audible. Please proceed.
All right, thank you. I want to say this from the outset that I appreciate the first presenter. Welcome to my presentation. My name is Thomas Esinyen Dang. And the thesis of my paper is effectiveness of clinical supervision of teachers to enhance performance in public secondary schools in Turkana Central. It is from this thesis that I generated this article that I am presenting to you today. It is one of my objectives, and the article itself, the objective of this article itself is the effect of classroom observation on teachers' performance in public secondary schools in Turkana Central. I want to tie it with the theme of this scientific research, theme of this conference, which is operationalization of entrepreneurship, education, health, and technology sustaining biodiversity. I want to tie it to that, and then say that the background of my article is the effectiveness of observing classroom situation, which encompasses setting up of the class for learners and progress and move forward. It is a very important. It's a very important situation in our learning institutions. This occurs many times when teachers are part of the supervision and regular monitoring by the respective administrators, the supervision part is essentially very, very important. The provision of critical framework in assessing an individual practice, which enhances skills and increasing one's strength in far as merits of conducting classroom observation. If I may borrow what Roy just said in his presentation, if I followed him, is that it is essential even for us to progress in the world of research and in bringing results to a level of being productive, to begin from a lower level like high school, where we really have to subject our learners into generating information and generating knowledge, rather than receiving content and filling them with information and disseminating information almost all the time. This enables to stimulate change and verification that change has taken place in order to avail a coherent and substantiated knowledge based on effective instruction. Many times you realize that not very, very close supervision is done in most of our schools, and that is what informed even this research of mine, where I'm saying that there should be some clinical supervision in our teachers so that they can be effective and even in their performance, so that it is not content, it's not information, it's not just knowledge disseminating of information, but some practice and some reality is also done. In this respect, it is extremely relevant to consider what to observe and how to observe it. So classroom observation, in my view, is a very important aspect of disseminating information and helping our learners. So Chair, therefore, this study focuses on the effect of classroom observation on teacher performance in public secondary schools, and I am zeroing in so much on Turkana Central. The statement of my problem, classroom observation in public secondary schools within Turkana is supposed to give a direct weight in the performance of teachers rather than just instructors and general satisfaction with the supervisor's classroom observation practices only. Although the Ministry of Education is focused on improving the supervision of instruction in schools, much still needs to be done in relation to classroom observation, because it is in the classroom that knowledge is given, content is given, and learners learn, and talents are nurtured, and skills are improved. And so there must be enough time given and close supervision and critical supervision given to the classroom observation. Information discussion among people in Turkana community and related research findings suggest that the poor student performance in our schools in Turkana Central is partly related to ineffective classroom observation. Classroom observation, in my view, is a touchy issue, and that's why I am following it very, very closely. This assumption from the stakeholders that students in public secondary schools in Turkana County perform poorly is as a result of ineffectiveness of classroom observation by the principals and the administrators. Yet, the fact that many students perform well in their examination is a reality. It's against this backdrop that this study arose from, that of classroom observation on teacher performance in public secondary schools in order to enhance performance. The research objective in this article, Dr. Chair, is to establish the availability of teaching and learning resources on teachers' performance in public secondary schools. 2, to determine the extent to which teaching and learning resources affect on teacher performance in public secondary schools. 3, challenges faced by supervisory role of principals or other administrators in enhancing teacher professional development. The methodology is investigation adopted a descriptive survey design where quantitative and qualitative approaches were used. The target population for this investigation was the 8 secondary schools in Turkana Central. And for your information, the secondary schools have increased now. There are more than that. But when I started this research, there are very few. Many other schools have come up. A census approach was used where all the respondents comprising of 8 secondary school was 1 quality officer, and 48 heads of department in these schools were involved. Data was collected using questionnaires and interview guide. Both quantitative and qualitative data was analyzed using a statistical package for social sciences. The results are as follows. Adequacy and availability of teaching and learning resources. The results in the table below, as you can see, Chair, implies that most of the facilities were inadequate, which may adversely affect the teaching, the learning process in schools, and finally, the performance of students was also affected. You know, learning materials like books, infrastructure, human resource, and lack of even goodwill from the leaders. Effective of teaching and learning materials and performance. The findings of this study depict that the use of instructional materials has perfected the student learning skills, thus improving the academic performance. The extent to which teaching resources influence teachers' performance in KCSE, the findings of the study in the table below imply that both categories of respondents were all in agreement that teaching resources influence teachers' academic performance at the Kenya secondary school education. Challenges faced by classroom observation by principals in enhancing teachers' professional development. This situation poses an obstacle to the supervisory role of the principals who not only rely on the funds from government to purchase instructional materials, but funds are also needed for teachers, for teacher development. So funds has always been a problem. And if I follow Dr. Roy, funds not only are available at the secondary school level or at the institutional level, but even at the national level, funds have always been a problem. And yet, funds are needed to improve all these areas of learning and research. In conclusion, Chair, because of time, the study was set to establish the effects of classroom observation on teacher performance of public secondary schools in Turkana Central. From the analysis of the findings, it was revealed that teaching and learning resources were available in school, but they were not adequate. Inadequacy, in my view, Dr. Chair, is a really big problem. It is a really big problem, and I wish to continue in this research so that we know that resources are required, though inadequate, but must be available in good quantities so that we can be able to help our learners and our students and improve even in the area of research and provision and other areas of life of the economy of the country. The inadequate resources were like textbooks, stationery, teaching aids, laboratory. Others were teaching aids, maps and charts and radios and television, computers, projectors, and supplementary books and other relevant teaching materials. It was also established that teaching resources influence teachers' performance at greater extent. You can imagine a situation where 20 students are sharing one textbook. Yeah, and allow me, Chair, to give an interview. For the last 4 years running, Kenya National Examination Council has been setting one question in biology just because students are not doing very well in it. And there is not enough sensitization to the lower level so that teachers are able to prepare and know that this concept are supposed to get into the students. 4 years in running, and they have not been sensitized on that, and that's why Kenya National Examination keeps setting questions in that area so that students may learn. And perhaps
that second, Thomas,
is because of our lack of resources. Very quickly, Chair, my recommendation is that through this, the principals really be ready to do classroom observation, make visits to the classes and know what is going on. A classroom setting is a very important situation for dissemination of information and knowledge. Yeah, the way teachers do their work in class, the principal and other administrators must make sure that they visit and make regular visits to the classroom work and whatever is going on in class. Through thorough checking of students' exercise books, yeah, and the post-observation.
Thank you, Thomas.
In every school in order to assist. Otherwise, I want to say that if we
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Thomas. We thank you. Thank you for your presentation. We will move on to the next presenter, and we will come back to you with a few questions once the next the next two presenters have made their presentation. I now welcome Dr. Charles Lagat, who is going to do his presentation on enhancing integration of sustainable development goals in teaching and research in higher education. Dr. Lagat, your time starts now.
Yeah, thank you, Chair of the session. And I take this opportunity to greet all the participants in this conference. Much appreciation also to the Vice Chancellor and the keynote speaker for opening this session and very impactful discussion which they gave us at the beginning, emphasizing on sustainable development and also the issues about biodiversity. So I'm happy to be here. I'm presenting a paper which is resulting from a survey we conducted with my colleagues, Dr. Sura Mohammed and Dr. Peter Gidaiga. It's an ongoing research which we are conducting. My name is Professor Charles Lagat. I teach in the School of Business and Economics at Moore University. And I'm also the Director for International Programs and Linkages at Moore University. So our paper is on enhancing integration of SDG in teaching and research in higher education. And which we are presenting this paper based on the title of this conference, Operationalization of Entrepreneurship, Education, Health, and Technology in sustaining biodiversity. And we address the theme on education and professional training. So it's about education and professional training. That's our key area. So next slide. Yeah, on sustainable development goals, I'm happy it was mentioned in the opening remarks. Sustainable development goals covers a wide range of complex socio-economic and environmental challenges, and addressing them requires transformation in how societies and economies function, and how we interact with the planet, and of course, issues about sustaining biodiversity. And the universities contribute in sustainable development. In March, the contribution of universities to sustainable development is much broader, as they can support implementation of every one of the SDGs, as well as implementation of the syllabus development, integrating in the syllabus, and pedagogies that are used where the faculty can use examples from SDG and having the best practices that articulate best methods for enabling education for sustainable development. So university education, higher education plays a key role because it brings out these SDGs and it brings the practice to the classroom, and also the participants can be able to integrate, and as they graduate from the university, they can go out and enhance sustainable development. And also we note that none of the SDGs, none of the 17 SDGs can be achieved without the contribution of higher education and research. Because through research, universities play a unique role in producing new knowledge and innovation to address these global challenges. We need education, we need higher education so that we can carry out this research and bring out in the teaching. Next slide. Yeah, we also looked at some of the theories which try to explain how these interactions occur. And the stakeholder theory talks about that different stakeholders are creating pressure on organizations to contribute towards sustainable development goals. And as we see out there in the industry, industries are being called upon to to address CSR and to address sustainable development, even in their products, the products they manufacture and the products they produce and all that. Yeah, in the secondly, while companies can choose to ignore the external pressure, they may try to ignore this external pressure, but then they lose
You muted yourself.
Sorry for that. Yeah, any complex system such as the Earth is composed of multiple parts which are connected and interconnected upon each other environment. So we are all interconnected. All these parts are interconnected, and there is need for all the parts to work together as they address sustainable development. Next slide. The next slide, please. Yeah, enhancing the integration of SDGs in the university requires a coordinated approach in order to achieve the desired action outcomes. And we looked at the various literature in Kenya about how the universities have contributed to sustainable development, and we realized that there's a gap. That's why we are conducting this research. This paper discusses the results of a survey which this is a pilot survey which we carried out to address this, and the findings, the next slide, on the findings is that this relation indicate that 33% of the faculty are familiar with SDGs, while 59% are not quite sure whether familiar with SDGs and the details of SDGs and why they are there. And 8% are saying are not aware. We go to the next slide, applicability of SDGs. When we ask the faculty about whether these SDGs are applicable to higher education, apart from SDG number 4, which we know is about quality education, then they pointed out almost all the SDGs, especially SDG number 5 on gender equality and all that, and also which is attributed to the issue. There's a call for gender equality in Kenya and equal representation. That's always been there. Then SDG number 8 was also pointed out, and also SDG number 5 on good health. Number 3 on poverty was also pointed out. And we noticed that SDG number 13, 14, and 15 were not picked up by the faculty. These are 13 is about life under the water, 14 is about life on Earth, and 15 is about climate action. So these are not 13 is climate action. So these ones were not pointed out. And then this points to the need for more sensitization on faculty and staff so that they can emphasize on all the SDGs when they and their practices and when they are conducting research. Next slide. We also sought to confirm from the faculty members in terms of which of the SDGs are more relevant. And 75% of the relevance of the SDGs in there, 5% say that the SDGs are relevant in teaching and curriculum development, so that, and this is points to the fact that when they are developing their curricula, they use the SDGs as a point of reference when developing their curricula. And they percentage 8% also pointed out on co-curricular activities that when they are going out, an expression of full, or despite
Okay, we seem to have lost Prof. He had that seconds to complete his presentation, and that means all right. We need to move forward. We need to move.
Slide it.
Okay, we lost you. You have. I can allow you another 30 seconds to just put the last point. Network. I think the network went off, so we lost.
Yeah, the network went off. Sorry for that. Yeah, some of the key areas of SDG which are relevant. The next slide, please, because we are winding up. Contribution of SDGs towards universities towards SDG realization. We sought this from the staff, and we find that 48% consider the university playing a great role in the realization of SDGs, and 6% are doubting whether the universities are contributing to this. The next slide. We also looked at the faculty engagement in SDGs over the last 4 years, and most of the faculty have been engaged in exchanges, international exposure, because SDG is a wide concept which is global, and we find that there have been quite a number of exchanges. Also with the students, most of the students have also been involved in exchange programs that are, or engagements, not really programs, but engagements that are related to SDG. And that also brings in the issue of that they can be able to appreciate sustainability and the issues of sustainable development in a global perspective. The next slide, let's go to the next slide. Yeah, staff engagement in terms of SDG, 79% confirm that the last commitment, that's also good. The last slide, we have made some conclusions that the universities are contributing towards these SDGs, and we have recommending that there is need for universities to increase the sensitization of their faculty about SDGs so that they can incorporate in their teaching, in their research, and in their outreach program, they can be able to incorporate SDGs.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that presentation. We thank you. We'll come back to you with a few questions. Is Mandina within?
The extent of the impact on sustainable development.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.
Your presentation.
Yes, sorry for the technology issues of disconnection. Thank you.
That's all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
we need to go to the
you.
next presenter. Is Mandina within?
Yes, yes, I am within.
Very good. It is your turn. It's your turn.
Okay. Thank you so much. I am Madina Dubaguyo, Master's Education.
Very good. And you can continue to post your questions on the chat so that the presenters can pick those questions. That will make it efficient when we come to answering the questions. They will just pick them up, and when we give them their chance, they will just respond. Put the questions on the chat. It also gives us a chance to record your questions and keep them with us. Thank you. Madina, sorry. Continue. It's your chance.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. I am Madina Dubaguyo, Master's student of Education Leadership and Management in Kemu, Middle East University. I am presenting my paper, which I got from my main thesis, the influence of parental characteristic on parental involvement in education, and a case study of public day secondary school in Moyales County, Marsabit County. My topic is one of my objectives, and that is parental income and parental involvement in education among public day secondary school in Moyales County. The parental involvement is a situation in which parents are actively involved in their education, in their children's education, and carry out their parental responsibilities to ensure that the students are supported in their learning. In 1980s, parental involvement combined with growing concern about education quality became a major problem in USA. Statement of a problem. In Marsabit County, parental involvement in children's education remains a key concern. The education dialogue of 2018 conducted by Ministry of Education revealed that in terms of numeracy and literacy among class 3 learners compared to other regions, Marsabit County, the Marsabit County performed relatively low. In particularly, mathematics, English, Kiswahili mean score remain low, were ranked the lowest. This indicates that there is a parental involvement in their children's school is lacking. According to NEC 2020 report, the counties, coast and northeast counties were ranked among the poorest performers in 2019 KCSE. This study examined the link between parental income and parental involvement in education among public secondary school in Moyale sub-county. A research hypothesis. There is no significant relationship between parental income and parental involvement in education among public day secondary school in Moyale sub-county, Marsabit County. The theoretical framework. The paper is anchored on human capital theory by Skirts 1969. Next slide, methodology. This is to use a descriptive section design. All the public day secondary school in Moyale sub-county were targeted, particularly students and head teachers. In Moyale sub-county, there are 10 public day secondary school with a total enrollment of 1,861 students. The sample size was 329 students who were selected using simple random sampling. The principles were chosen purposefully. Questionnaires were used to collect data. The research variables were described using descriptive statistics such as frequency and percentage. To identify the relationship between the study variables, correlation analysis was conducted. Next slide. Descriptive analysis on parental education. On parental education, we have various items and parameters like disagree, neutral, and agree. Concerning this, the findings suggested that most students acknowledge the involvement of their parents or guidance in their education. Next slide. Next slide.
That one.
Descriptive statistics on parental income. We also have various items, around 7 of them, where we have the parameters of disagree, neutral, and agree, and the number of students, number of students, and the percentage were put in the table below, above. The result implies that the income of most parents in Moyale sub-county is not enough to sustain the education of their children. Next slide, correlation analysis. And we have also this table to show the correlation analysis. The result indicated that parental income correlation, which is at 0.2868, P is at 0.5, had a positive and significant correlation with parental involvement in education. This implies that the improvement in parental income was a significantly associated with parental involvement in education. Finding agree with UMA 2018 assertion that parents' income had a positive influence on parents' ability to pay. Hypothesis testing. The null hypothesis stated that there was no significant relationship between parental income and parental involvement in education among public day secondary school in Moyale sub-county, Marsabit County. The correlation result indicated that p-value of 0.00 to 0.05 significant level. Therefore, the null hypothesis was rejected, implying that there was a significant relationship between parental income and parental involvement in education among public day secondary school in Moyale sub-county, Marsabit County. Conclusion. The study concluded that parents in Moyale sub-county lack adequate income to support their children's education. The study also concluded that parental income had a positive and significant influence on parental involvement in education among public day secondary school in Moyale sub-county, Marsabit County. the implication is that parental income is expected to enhance the involvement of the parent in education. Next slide. Recommendation. This study established that parental income had a positive and significant influence on parental involvement in education among public day secondary school in Moyales County, Marsabit County. The study recommended that parents need to improve their participation in the education of their children. Parents should use part of their income to ensure proper facilitation of their children's education. That's my recommendation. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to present my paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martina. Thank you. You saved a couple of minutes. And I'm hoping the presenters are available. We'll give you a couple of minutes to respond to the questions that were raised in the three presentations. If you have taken the questions on the chat, we will be able to go on and respond to them. So I'll ask Thomas, and if, of course, if you have a specific question that you did not ask and you want to raise it, please put up your hand and I'll give you a chance. Professor and Madina, you picked your questions. We will give you a chance to respond. Can I start with Thomas? Have you picked any questions that you want to respond to? Or is there anybody who wants to raise questions to any of the presenters? We have a few minutes, about 5 minutes or so, to respond, for them to respond to these questions. Thomas, there are a few questions for you online.
Victoria, I really have no question to ask.
Not to ask, to answer.
All right, I have no question.
For example, there is a question on which gap did your study fill? That's one of the questions. And above it.
Yeah. Okay.
There's another question.
Okay. The gap is lack of close supervision of the classroom attendance and the work that is going on in class. There is a detach. Teachers are left to do their work in class without much observation and supervision. Hence, lack of establishment of how much content and work. Sorry. How much content and work goes on in class. A class setting is a critical issue which needs to be supervised. That's why the topic of my thesis is the effectiveness of clinical supervision of teachers in order to enhance performance. So in this article where I'm asking classroom observation by school heads and school principals, is very critical. So the gap is that there is a detach between the school heads and what goes on in class. And if there is very little supervision, it is scanty, where school heads just visit classroom once in a while, and if there is a critical issue. So there is lack of very close supervision of what goes on in class. That's why I call it classroom observation by the heads of its institution. So that gap is there and it is lacking and needs to be strengthened, because even the quality assurance officers are very few in the sub-counties. And so we do very little, yeah.
Thank you. You can respond to a question on the chat, which you can you can put down on the chat for everybody else to see. There's a question on what are the empirical theories that supported your research findings, and what policy framework can be derived from your study to improve secondary school education. So that is a question that you can conceptualize. You don't have to give an answer right away, but you can give the answer also on the chat so that somebody else can follow. There's a question. So the next person who should be responding to a question is Professor. Do you have some questions that are on the chat?
Yeah, I have noted only one question. relating to resource mobilization. I put an answer there that the universities do resource mobilization through joint projects, which they do with other stakeholders, and also through faculty members developing grant proposals to implement research and to come up with new innovations which can address development. That's how this is addressed by the universities. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question for any of the presenters?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to ask the first presenter, the one who was talking about education, observation and education, Thomas. I see the title is effect. If you return that particular space, I can see the title again. My name is Professor Kihara, and I'm a researcher. The title is Effects of Classroom Observation on Teacher Performance of Public Secondary School Teachers in Turkana Sub-County. And I agree with what the researcher is saying, that without cross-monitoring of what teachers are doing in school or in classes, there can be that disconnect he's talking about. And what I wanted is how we can enhance this particular research, because I can see there is the word effect. And if you look at the title itself, you can see that there are two variables. There are two variables that are under consideration. That is whatever he is calling classroom observation. Therefore, you need to concentrate these ones in a model, because there's no way you can see the effect through the sensors which you talked about. Deeper in your study, you say that you took a census, and there's no way you can see the effect of X on Y. The teacher's performance is Y, and X is classroom observation. There's no way you can see the effect of X on Y without having that model which will show how X is related to Y. And at the same time, once you model these particular variables, then you are supposed to sample. You are supposed to sample so that you can be able to show the effect. So it's improvement. It is improvement of this particular this is so that it can actually capture and present well what is intended to.
Thank you very much. That is a contribution. You do not have to respond to it, just have the note. And
I've taken note, Professor. Thank you. I've taken note.
Thank you. Is there any question for Mandina? Either on or yes? Online, Mandina, have you taken the question on?
Yes.
Okay, please respond to it.
There was a question which was asking about how measuring the income, parental income. Parental income can be measured by look at the salaries on the permanent job, cash rates by the parents, business done by the parents, and the farming activities that is done by the parents. And the same person asking about whether that income, parental income, is one of my objectives. Yes, it is one of my objectives in my main thesis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mandina. We are about to go to the next presentation, to the next set of presentations. So I will ask the presenters to get ready. That is Lucy.
Yes, I'm present.
There's one more question for Mandina. Please look it up on the chat as we get the team. As I confirm that the presenters are ready. Lucy, are you ready, Dr. Lucy?
Yes, I'm there.
Adam.
Yes, I am ready, but I thought I would be on by 11:25.
You're available?
Yeah, I'm available. I thought I planned that I would be on by 11:25, exactly this time.
We are running slightly behind time.
Okay.
That doesn't mean you'll not present in a few minutes. You need it tight, too tight?
Well, it's not too tight, but tight.
Can I ask Lucy whether we can let Adam present first?
No. Okay.
Very good. So Lucy is in agreement. So we will go on and have presentations by Adam, then Lucy, then Dr. Mwelisha. So we'll give you the chance to do exactly your presentation now, like you have just said. So let's get set. Keep asking the questions, keep putting them on the chat, whether for the presentation that is going on or even other presentations, people will pick them up and continue to improve and increase their productivity. So Adam, it is your chance now.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you all for allowing me this opportunity. I am in Mogadishu, a slightly different situation than you guys have in Kenya. So thank you very much, the chair and the other presenters and all. Mine is a derivative from a already published article. This is English language proficiency among non-English speaking undergraduate students in Kenyan universities. And the problem and the question is, does this proficiency or the lack thereof relate with academic performance of the students that are subjects in this study? And so the background is, just like many other countries around the globe, everywhere, English language is taken for granted as being the medium of instruction of all levels of education, and Kenya is not an exception. At universities, English is the primary language of academics and research, and its mastery and proficiency among students and staff also influence the overall learning experience. And in Kenya, English is taken for granted. Everybody is taught when they graduate from high school, English is fine with them. They can go and communicate and be at ease in classrooms at the higher educations. So the background, Kenyan, with that in mind, the Kenyan universities admit foreign students from all backgrounds, irrespective of their nationality, race, language, and ethnicity. Oboge and others, 2017, and Mayer, 2012. People, the problem statement is strong English language mastery and high proficiency is a requirement for all students to adjust into scholarly demands of university education, Chowdhury and Roche. Latest academic reports have revealed that the undergraduate students from non-English speaking countries encounter numerous challenges that affect their academic integration and achievement in Kenya higher education institutions. Social challenges have been encountered. Mortilisian and others, 2015, Mayer, 2012. Weak literary skills, set instructional practices, academic rigor, and disciplinary discourse. Social isolation and anxiety due to limited English language mastery. Those students. Low academic engagement and instructional discourse in class, and low academic performance, or worse yet, a dropout. Objectives of this study is to examine the relationship between English language proficiency and academic performance among non-English speaking undergraduate students who have been enrolled in Kenyan universities. The methodology of this research was mixed method, Creswell 2014. The target population was first-year undergraduate students in Kenyan universities using CGPA to measure academic performances. The sample was 61 foreign students. By foreign, that meant people who came from countries that English is not language of learning and teaching. Also, sample included 13 academic staff from 6 universities in Kenya. Data collection tools were questionnaires, interview guide, document analysis guide, and methodology respondents attain primary and secondary education through Arabic, as in the case in South Sudan or Sudan itself, Somali, as is the case in Somalia, French, some from Djibouti and other African countries, Francophone African countries, and Kiswahili as the educational language and medium of instruction, whereby all academic staff, 9 of them female and 4 male, had satisfactory mastery of English for instruction and research. The research were undergraduate programs were business management, economics, engineering, computing, community health, international relations, communication, journalism. Rating of English language proficiency, poor performance, 49%, average performance, 31%, excellent, 20% of self-rating of the language proficiency these students. Academic performance, associating English language proficiency with academic performance, the sample size was 61. 0% of them, of the 61 students, got 4.0 GPA. 37% of them got between 3 to 399 GPA, and 24 of them got 2.00 up to 299 GPA. Less than 2 were 0, as it was impossible. Does the language of instruction affect the overall academic performance, which is the thrust of this study? Performance of foreign students from non-English speaking countries. 73% said yes, 19% said no, and 18% responded, we don't know. These students attain low GPA because of low content mastery, while others do not complete courses. Academic staff, except the foreign students have poor writing skills, and they do not ask for help from us. Was another observation. Academic performance correlation is significant was significant at the 0.01 level, two-tailed. Statistically significant and positive relation between English language proficiency and academic performance. A correlation was 0.851, and probability value was 0.01. Majority of foreign students, the conclusion is majority of foreign students have limited English language proficiency for effective academic and literary engagement. That's ring true in the study. Karimi 2010 and Mwangi 2015. Writing skills, grammar, punctuation, choice, vocabulary, and sentence structure is the stronger barrier, and have been in this study too, to learning Ojiambo and others, 2017. Weak English language skills contributes to low academic performance and lack of deep cognitive skills required for undergraduate degree education. Recommendations were, the article recommends that Kenya universities to offer English proficiency tests as part of admission. That means to have the students tested, that the academic discourse will have no problem between them and other students, and between them and their teachers. So one main recommendation is that universities offer English proficiency tests, and that is applied within the part of admission. One is found out that the high school, the student had high school in those countries, one of those countries. Criteria for foreign and graduate students from non-English speaking countries. I mean, non-English speaking countries here academically means students that came from countries that do not apply English all in high school and primary schools, upper primary and high schools. English language programs and mentoring sessions to promote academic and social inclusion and interaction, like English clubs, recreation, public speaking, debates, English classes for writing and reading skills, where students lack a sufficient English proficiency when they get tested. The faculty to apply pedagogical approaches that accommodate students with low English language proficiency.
You have 30 seconds to conclude.
Okay. Okay, sorry. Peer teaching, counseling sessions. Can we move on? A recommendation: remove any forms of language, racial, and ethnic prejudices in and out of class, like making fun of students that don't understand or misspeak. Universities should also provide mechanisms to support foreign students adjust and cope with expected academic rigor at university. Promote international relations and understanding as part of student globalization. Move, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll come back to you with questions. Please take note of the questions that are posted on the chat so that when they come to the spotting, it will be quicker and easier for you. Continue to put your questions on the chat and you will have a chance to respond to them. We move forward to Dr. Luce. You are 10 minutes and about to start.
Chair?
Yes?
I'm present. I'm waiting for my presentation to be put up.
Yes, as soon as it is, I'll also start timing you, so no problem.
Right.
We don't have your presentation. You did not share with us.
I did.
Could you go ahead if you have it to present from that side? I think the secretariat here says they don't have the presentation. You have it with yourself?
Yes, I'll put it up. Can you see it?
Yeah, make sure it is a good slideshow. Then we can continue.
Let me put it on the slideshow. Where do I do that?
It is continue on to your right. Continue to your right. Continue to your right. After the animations.
After?
After the word animations.
Okay, there it is.
Click on it. You have not clicked. Then go from the beginning.
Is it there? Is it up?
Okay, proceed. Keep going.
Okay.